Hello, and welcome to today's episode of The Ways of the World, where we focus upon a different country and culture and discover the different ways of the world through the lenses of Villanova students and faculty. These Villanovans have studied abroad and are here to share their experiences. I'm your host, Ava Petrosky. Today, we are going to travel to Brazil, and I have with me here two seniors at Villanova University, Grace, Addai, Owusu, and Meg Martin, who actually were my colleagues when we traveled to Brazil with our student-run production company in October of 2023, last year. And it's the same program that Natalie and Daniel had traveled to the Philippines with that were featured a couple episodes ago. So Grace and Meg, thank you so much for being here today. Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Of course. Tell me about Brazil.
Well, Brazil was very interesting. Oddly enough, I guess it doesn't really sleep itself. Because I don't think we were sleeping.
No.
Yeah. It was always kind of going and flowing, but it was a beautiful place to be. And I think specifically the place that we had gone to, which is Salvador, given the fact that it's so rich in history and culture and would be considered the epicenter for a majority of, Brazilian culture, you really get to understand like the truth behind Brazil. I would say it's very different than going to Rio. But we honestly were like really fortunate to have understood Salvador and its history and being the first capital. But also it is understood as the most highly populated Black population outside of the continent of Africa. So there's so much to, be discussed about specifically Salvador, and I'm just really happy to have been given the chance to go there.
Yeah, I agree with Meg. Honestly, Brazil was just, I always told myself, I want to, travel a lot when I grow up, and I didn't really have a chance to travel a lot. So, being able to be a part of this and going to Brazil was honestly so transformative for me, especially seeing how Brazil is. And how Meg said, it's the highest Black population outside the continent of Africa, yet you still see the roots within Salvador of the African tradition, of the African culture. And if it couldn't be tell from my middle and last name, I'm Ghanaian, so I'm from West Africa. And when we were there, we were eating foods and seeing things and saw symbols that just reminded me so much of West Africa, that at one point I was calling my mom almost every day, Mom, it feels like home. This honestly feels like I'm in Ghana. And there was even some places that were very Nigerian influenced, very Yoruba influenced, and you just saw it everywhere. So Brazil, for me, it was a trip that just taught me no matter where I go, I can always find that connection. And I didn't expect that to happen. So that was really crazy for me.
Can you tell me more about why you enrolled in the program?
So I am a STEM major. I'm global health. So my major was very different than everyone else's who was oh yeah, I'm communications, I'm finance, I'm peace and justice. So I was the only STEM major at the time, I believe. And it was very tricky because I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I knew I always wanted to travel abroad. That was the one thing I told myself in high school. I was when you are in college, you will study abroad. That's no exceptions. And a lot of colleges were if you're pre-med or if you're bio or you're this, it might be a bit hard to work into your schedule. Villanova was oh yeah, you can definitely travel abroad. You could study abroad. So when I first found out about this program, it was actually because I heard about the Premier Rooted. I saw it was being promoted. I didn't really know exactly what it was. So I just kind of assumed it was for communication majors and just a student-run film, whatever it could have been. So I just let that go. I wasn't able to go, but I heard about it. The next time it came back on my radar, my roommate, who was actually Meg's co-director at the time for Her Time Is Now, the film that they did in Kenya, my roommate was the co-director and talked a lot about the process. I saw how they were, very frustrated at times, very tired at times, but also still very passionate about it and what that trip did for them. And I realized oh, this is more than just an opportunity to just get a free trip. This is literally changing someone's life. This is being a part of something. And I was like, if there's anything I want to do, it's to help people, especially with different crises in underrepresented and underdeveloped communities. That's my whole mission statement of what I want to do growing up. So I was like, if I could do that and travel to learn about different cultures, which I want when I become a medical professional, I want to be like a global citizen and a culturally competent medical professional. I need to be able to go to other places and be able to interact and understand them. So when my roommate was talking about it, I was like, I have to do this course. So one day my roommate called me and was like, what's your banner ID? And I said it. And they're like, okay, you're in the class. And I'm like, that's it? And they're like, yeah, you're in. And I heard like Hezi in the background mumbling. And then it hung up. And I was like, I guess I'm in the class. And then it was the first day and I walked into the room. Some people I knew, some people I didn't. And it was history after that.
Yeah, and you decided to become producer.
I didn't decide, actually.
What a crazy first.
No.
position
That's
to be in.
very, very funny. I didn't decide. In fact, I actually, on the list, I wrote editor, assistant, camera, and researcher. Like, that's the 3 positions I chose.
No
And
way.
Caleb looked at me and was like, yeah, everyone's going to do that, so you got to make a new list. And I was like, I don't know anything about film. I don't know anything about that. I like photography. That's it. I just know how to take pictures. So I was like, maybe, can I do something with cameras? They're like, oh, we'll see what you can do. So then I said, please don't make me director because I'm very busy on campus. Please don't make me producer because everyone's going to rely on me and I know nothing about this and I'm still very busy on campus. And don't make me line producer because I suck with money. And then I became line producer and I said, oh my goodness. And then a week later, they were like, actually, you're going to be producer now. So now I have the position with the most amount of control and power. And I'm just like, I know nothing about film production. I am a health major. I'm STEM. I can tell you how to, dilate chemicals and a titration. Like, I don't know anything about this. But, I mean, shout out to Joe. Joe was my rock, and so was Zenaida. I love them both. And they definitely set me up for success to do it again. So, yeah.
So for our viewers that don't know, Joe and Zenaida were your co-producers.
Correct.
Yes,
Correct.
and Hezi is the professor, our executive
yes, our
producer,
executive producer.
and Caleb was our assistant.
Yeah.
Teacher's
the
assistant.
Yeah.
Yes. So I want to hear about why you enrolled in the program, but first I'm just more so curious. Grace, tell me a little bit more about how you navigated through becoming a producer and getting thrown into this role that you didn't want in the first place,
Yeah.
and then were really thrown into this hands-on, everyone's relying on you role.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think I honestly was mourning the first 2 days because I was like, oh my gosh, everyone's going to be relying on me. I don't know what to do. I've never done this. I remember I searched up what do producers do? And I was reading so many articles, just trying to figure it out. I read the little blurb that Hezi, our professor, sent us, and those list of positions. But also, honestly, I wouldn't have done it without Joe. So Joe was one of the producers during the trip to Kenya, so the year before. So he had a lot of experience. Honestly, Joe was reaching out to us in the summertime, already preparing and planning. He knew the next steps. He wrote Zenaida and I an outline. And Z and I, even though we've never done it before, we were very much whatever we can do to help, let us know. Joe's very much I don't want to bother anyone. I'll do it myself. And we were like, no, we're going to protect you and your mental health and your emotions and your physical health. Let us know what to do. So it took a lot of adjusting. I think Joe listed out everything that needs to be done. And then each of us 3, we were just I can do that. I can do that. And we slowly took it away. Within 2 weeks, I was kind of getting a hang of it. I thought it would stay that slow. It did not, obviously. I think for me, the hardest part was definitely post-production, because I've never been a part of a production company, especially in post. So it was a lot to deal with. But I think the hardest part in post-production was keeping the morale of the producer team, because we honestly got so down in the dumps from how stressful it was, in all honesty. But I wouldn't have survived without my co-producers. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have figured out how to do it. I wouldn't have survived, and I wouldn't have adapted as quickly as I did to that position shift.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So let's shift a little bit. Meg, tell me a little bit more about why you enrolled in the course.
Yeah, so by the time, we were going to Brazil, it would be, I guess you could say, my 3rd year being involved with the documentary class. The year before, I was director, one of the co-directors for a very important film called Her Time Is Now, which is, what you had talked about. And that was in Kenya. And And I knew I wanted to kind of repeat the class again. I just didn't know what I wanted to do, you know? Because, like, to go from being director, you know, really the only other option is, like, to be a producer or maybe to be an editor. And I don't think I was quite ready to be a producer just yet. But, I mean, to me, any chance that I could take this class, you know, I'm going to do it. There's not very many programs that exist, you know, that are like this one. And for, what is it, average 18 students to go to a country and to bring all this equipment and to spend 2 weeks there, like, and for it to be, you know, funded. That, you know, UCLA, USC, Columbia, like those places don't even have that, from what I understand. And I'm like, this is like a truly special program to be enrolled in. And even more so, it's special to, you know, learn with Grace, and it's special to learn with everyone in the class, but also under like Hezi and Caleb and Amari. So literally any chance that I have at taking the social justice documentary class, because I think it's, you know, given me so much, and I want to give it, you know, everything that I can. I do it over and over again.
Yeah. Now, you have done it over and over again.
Yes.
You were both involved with Natalie and Daniel this year in the Philippines.
That is
So
correct.
I do want to talk obviously more about Brazil, but first, tell me a little bit about your experience in the Philippines.
I think, actually, before we move on to that, you should mention how you were a collaborator for a documentary that was filmed. And
Yeah.
that's how you got involved.
Right. So yeah, during the year of COVID, it was interesting. There was really no traveling. But basically what they had to do is they're like, we're going to have these cameras travel. So the group of students at that time basically just shipped me a little Pelican case of like goodies and a camera. And I'm just from upstate New York. And the other camera that they had sent was to Alaska, to a woman, Cordelia. And we filmed our lives for 6 months. I think I did my last interview in April. It was very unorthodox to what we're used to, like, by all means. But I think a great project came out of it, and I think my start at Villanova was obviously as being a collaborator. So I owe a lot to the program itself. But, you know, in terms of, like, the Philippines, very, very different experience.
Very.
Very different experience. And I'm sure you kind of understand that because you went to Brazil. Daniel and Natalie were here. Things move differently in the Philippines. Travel, completely different.
Completely different.
A lot of boats. You know, but the stories... Here's something that's interesting. I thought the stories would be... And you think I would know this because I've gone to Kenya as well, and then Brazil, and there's some similarities there, but, like, you know, it's hard not to talk about the same things. And there's a reason why we're talking about the same things. And what I think is so special about the program in these places is, you know, climate change is huge. Encroachment of land is huge. But we get to focus on specific people in communities in Brazil, in the Philippines, that are not close by any means. And we get to focus on people who are making a change. And so I think that was just a beautiful part as I'm reflecting now about, you know, going to the Philippines.
It's crazy how we're going to so many different countries each year, and yet all the stories are very, very connected. So I think it's like Meg says, like, how do you try not to be as similar as the last? But at the same time, you're always going to be similar, yet you're always going to be different. So,
Can you talk more about the Brazil stories?
So I was mainly an editor for and cinematographer for, I guess you could say, our first or main documentary. And it's called Art of Resistance, where we follow around this community leader. Her name is Hijani. I guess you could call, like, I don't know what her official title would be. We just always knew her as, like, basically the matriarch.
Yeah.
But yeah, she is the matriarch of this Quilombo. And we follow her around through so many different aspects of her life. You know, there's moments where she's kind of by herself, and in these very sacred parts of their territory. There's also moments where you see her outside, interacting with the community, but also having students come and teaching them, and then overviewing and looking at a school. And like she does so many different things. And this is all to defend, you know, the rights of the Quilombolas, because she's a protector of them, and she's been a protector since what was she, 8 or something?
Yeah, 8. She was very
8
young.
years old when she became the leader of this community. And I mean, with her own 8-year-old standing beside her, kind of watching every single step that she makes. Hakel.
Oh my gosh.
It's a beautiful story, and it, you know, dives deep into connection to land, you know, because we're talking about like the trees, and it's like, you know, you see the Brazilian government just shaving down properties, and it's like, no, that's our ancestors, you know. So land protection, I think, in Art of Resistance, goes a lot deeper than just owning land, you know. And, you know, given the title, there's an art to it, you know, like it can be very dangerous. There's so many different aspects to it. You have to be a teacher, you have to be a leader, but you also have to still be you. What do you want? So I think that is like the essence of Art of Resistance.
Yeah. And even like with Art of Resistance, I love the title that they came up with. Like, shout out to Jameson and Trinity, the 2 co-directors, because it was such a beautiful title that really encapsulated, because Hijani's figuring out how to lead, how to do all this stuff. And then even some of the past leaders for other kingomas, for other places, one of the leaders got shot in the face, I believe like 12 times or something like that. And even while we're talking to Hijani throughout the process there, especially post-production when we came back to Villanova, she quite literally was on the run. She fled her house, was leaving because the government was on her and people were trying to take her life. And like we would be texting her like, hey, how do you feel about this? And all of a sudden she's like, I haven't been home in weeks because I'm running because they're after my life. And we're like, oh my God, this is how real these stories are, because we don't know how much longer we have with these collaborators. So while we still can, we at least want to share their story before anyone that's against it tries to cover it up. So we made 3 films, and we were the first year to do so. And I really hope the last year, because it was insanity. And the 2 other films we did was Mestre Guga. And Mestre Guga follows a man named Guga who was, he was an instructor for a form of martial arts at the time that was hidden as a form of dance, so that when people came from Africa, they could still practice their culture and martial arts, but they pretended it was dance so that when the Portuguese were enslaving them, they just thought they were dancing. Capoeira. There we go. So he was a capoeira instructor, and he did it for free. And he brought in multiple kids in the neighborhood to his studio for free, and he would teach them capoeira. He understood the culture, what it meant, the history, and what it did. And it's very funny because when I think of Brazil, I don't think of people who are my complexion or darker, but they all literally looked like me. So even meeting Guga, I was like, wow, like you look like one of my uncles. Like, and he was a very sweet man, always opening up, hugging us, so kind, just wanted to tell his story and wanted to make his daughter proud, especially, which is another theme we noticed between all 3 of those stories. Passing on culture, whether through practice or tongue or word or spirituality, whatever it is, from a parent doing everything they can for their child. And Guga was doing everything he could for his child, but also for the children of the community. And while he did not charge them at all, everything was free, he was also a man that was dealing with cancer. And he was in his late stages of the cancer battle, and yet he never charged them anything. And he had to do with all of these procedures, sometimes even cutting out of money that he would use to pay for his procedures, to pay for his studio, to pay for books for the students, to pay for uniforms. He was just constantly giving, and he never wanted anything back. And it was an insane thing to learn, because we're just like, you may be dying soon. You don't know how much time you have left with your daughter, and yet you are still using what is supporting your life and making you live longer to give back. And I remember one of the things in the paper cut I saw, and even meeting with him, he was like, I don't know how much time I have left, but all I care about is making my daughter proud of me and for her to be able to carry on my story and my legacy and to continue pushing this. And for the students of that area to also want to continue what I do and continue that legacy and know that. And just for context, the area was not the best. Obviously, there was a time where we wanted to order the students pizza. Even the pizza delivery man didn't want to come into the neighborhood because he was like, yeah, I don't go all the way there. Like, this is not the best neighborhood. They didn't want to come all the way. And the same with Hejani and the Quilombo. When we took like the vans or something, they're like, the farthest we can go is here. You guys have to walk the rest of the way because they're not in the safest neighborhoods. And even the police were walking around with certain like firearms, and we're like, okay, we have to be on our best behavior. Unfortunately, Mestre Guga did pass away while we were in the Philippines, actually. Ava, you were the one to break the news to me. Mm-hmm. And it was a lot to take in while on the trip, while we were already mentally and physically tired, and then kind of snapped emotionally because we made a connection with this man because we brought him to the premiere. So he came to be in Philadelphia for about a week. And I remember picking him up from his hotel, and we were talking to the translator, and I was listening to like SZA and Kendrick, and he was like rating all the songs I was playing on the radio. And I was like, oh, do you like this one? And I know very little Portuguese. He knows no English. So I'm trying to like tell him, because I'm driving, I can't use a translator. I'm like, do you like this one? And he like, this one's better, last one worse. And I'm like, okay. And like, he was such a funny, nice man. And he just loved everything. He would see raccoons. He would try to like feed the raccoons and pet them. He's like, oh, it's such a beautiful animal. Where in America, some people consider them as pests. He was in New York tearing up at Times Square. Like, I never thought I'd be able to see Times Square. He went on the Rocky steps and did the pose next to the statue. And he's like documenting everything on his WhatsApp story. So I'm like on his WhatsApp story watching everything. And he's like crying because he's like, guys, I never thought I'd be able to leave Brazil and do these things that I dreamed of for so long. And he was just happy about everything. He played with Hezzy's children. He was so nice. At the premiere, I remember everybody clapped for him and everyone's chanting his name, and he's standing up and he's literally sobbing and he's crying because he's like, you know, before I go, I never thought I'd be able to leave my legacy in this way. So when he passed, it hit us really hard on that trip. And we also used it as like a lesson to the people on the trip at the time of like, your collaborators, for those who don't know, collaborators are the people you film. We don't call them subjects. We call them collaborators because they collaborate with us. Your collaborators are more than just people that are telling you their story and you're filming. Like, you're entering their lives, and that relationship should be built for life. You should be constantly talking to them. And when they saw how heartbroken we were while we were mourning Guga, but still showing up to go to work, they realized, I think that's when they kind of locked in a little bit on the trip, because they were like, oh, this is real. Like, this is very, very real. This is how interesting these lives are to them. Yeah, but that was Guga. I don't know if you want to do Peking.
Yeah. You know, and also thank you for bringing up Guga. He's like probably one of the greatest things and greatest stories we've ever gotten the chance to capture in this program.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Obviously, you would know because you were there.
I did meet him, and he was
did meet him.
Incredible. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could attest to all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Guga's amazing.
Yeah. And, you know, on top of that, you know, another, I guess, a community leader is this woman. Her name is Dani. And, you know, she's raising her son, Paulo. And, you know, they find themselves in a really interesting position in the specific area that they're from. And the title's called Peeking Through the Sands. And it has to do with actually an indigenous community.
Yeah.
And in this community in Tubarão. And initially when we were starting out the story, we were just calling them the Clam Ladies. And that's what they called themselves, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, there's this history of picking clams. And there's a very specific way, and I'm sure we'll have a video to show you, but... and I'm pretty sure you also did it. Yeah, mm-hmm. It was awesome.
Yeah.
But it, you know, it's almost like this generational thing that is passed down. It's a family thing. It's a community-wide known practice. And, you know, we follow Dani. She is a clam lady. She teaches her son. And there's deep roots of what getting clams means. You know, now it's in the modern day used as like a form of recreation, but also keeper of tradition and remembering who you are. But if you were to look at like the history of it and the origins, it was, you know, not so nostalgic, right? It was kind of like a forced practice at the time, and a way of, and at certain points, you know, ways of making money because there was just really no other option. And I think it was really beautiful, kind of like the way that they use, you know, peeking through the sand as a clam, to kind of explain, you know, Dani's story and her son. Because, you know, with that, we're diving into like the economic and social hardships that are going on in this Indigenous community. And I think the clam itself is like a great analogy because they hold it very dearly. But also, you know, that they themselves are still trying to peek through the sand and defy all odds, you know, because like everywhere, communities that are, you know, disadvantaged, especially when it comes to education, you know, you're gonna find ways to kind of climb up and find a way for yourself. And I think that's what Dani is doing for her son.
Whenever I talk about it, I feel such pride. I'm like, yeah, we did that. But it's like not even pride in our work, but pride of those stories of like, oh, I can't believe we've met these people. I can't believe this is how amazing we are. It's like not our work, but them. And I also really like, shout out to Lauren and Andrea, the two co-directors for Peeking Through the Sand. I like how they did the title because it's like both peaking, like you're peaking, but also peaking like at the peak of something. So it's like that. I loved that.
Yeah.
So
It was a
much.
good play on words.
Yeah, it was a good play on words.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit more about our production company name and how the process of making it was?
Jameson, the co-director of Art of Resistance, did the class last year with Kenya, and he was a producer at the time. But I was told that he actually helped come up with the name, or he came up with the name for the Kenya's production team, which was Oak Tree Films. And I was like, you know, I really like that name. Just shoot your shot. Like, why don't you just try again? And he was like, oh, I don't know. I was like, just shoot your shot. You never know. And he ended up coming with the name that we chose, Stained Glass Films. And we got Stained Glass Films because he was saying, like, each of us are a piece of glass, different colors. But unlike a mosaic, we're not glued together. We're seared together with, like, a metal. We come together to make a beautiful painting, to make a beautiful story within it. Not just something to look at, but different stories. And honestly, once he gave that reasoning, I was like, I don't even want to hear the other options. Like, that just makes the most sense to me. But I will say I can't look at stained glass the same. Like, if I ever see stained glass, I'm like, that's films, that's tradition. Like, yeah.
It's embedded, solared, like stained glass into my life forever.
Seared.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit more about the culture and maybe some of the food that was representative? And Salvador is very different from the rest of Brazil.
Correct.
So it's got its own wonderful culture.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about that.
Okay, so Salvador, just for context on the map, it is like one of the most northeastern parts of Brazil, right? I think. Yes.
Yes.
It is. And it's very coastal, the areas that we were in. We were talking about clams, but also when we were in the Quilombo, like we were kind of right there on the water. But it is, like I was saying earlier, it's like the epicenter of all things that you know as traditionally Brazilian. You know, you have capoeira that stems from that area. You also have, oh my God, there's so many dances.
Yeah.
Like there's
so
many versions of dancing.
Or even when we went to the Candomblé house.
Candomblé, literally the start of that there. Super, you know, rich and deep origins. And the food. The food is amazing.
God,
and that's what you were saying.
Yes.
You know, and it's awesome because it's like Salvador is a starting point, right, of culture. And I think that's something we always kind of wanted to highlight a little bit. But you're seeing like all of this resilience and culture in different ways. You know, you have Dani and her son. And it's talking about like, well, you're literally getting clams for like sustenance. But also you have guga, and it's like capoeira disguised as a dance, but it's used for self-defense. But then you have Hejani, and it's like she has to wear a million different hats to protect the land itself. So, you know, everything about Salvador is rich. Even though I think, from our understanding, most of that country would say it's not so rich. But, you know, we were eating like muqueca, feijoada. There's a specific type of Brazilian lemonade that we had, and it was awesome. I don't know if you have any other.
Yeah, I am honestly, if El Salvador Bahia has 0 fans, I must have died. I loved Salvador. Like, it was amazing. And I know I mentioned it before, like being West African, just seeing such direct, strong ties in culture, because it was the first port enslaved Africans at the time. Like, when they got off the boat, that's where they touched. It was Salvador Bahia. And then, you know, obviously got moved to different areas, but that was like the first port that they touched. So there's very deep West African culture. So for me, it was really easy to adapt to the food. To all my West Africans out there, even anyone who has this, like palm oil, fish, okra, palm nut, things like that. Even certain pies they made, it was very similar to like meat pie. They had certain breads that was like puff puff bull fruit, like, and I'm just constantly eating everything. And I'm just like, wow, this is so easy to eat. Like, and I remember we were going there to eat, and Hejani, it was at the Quilombo, Hejani was like, yeah, you guys are gonna have something called like blood chicken or something like that. And I remember everyone was like, blood chicken. Yeah. Me personally, I was like, listen, we've eaten some crazy stuff in Ghana. Fill my plate, I wanna try it now. It was probably the best dish we had there. Oh my gosh, it was amazing. And then there was another time we had this pie that was like cassava and yam with palm oil and some other stuff and okra in it. And I like ate it, and it was amazing. And it was just so much. And I just feel like when people think of Brazil, they think of like Rio and like Carnival and like maybe like looser curls and like paler skin, because I think a lot of other Brazilians do not highlight or talk about El Salvador. They don't see it as like the cultural standpoint, but I think like Brazil can't be what it is without Bahia, without El Salvador, and it all stems from there. And I think if we don't highlight the originators, that's just not fair. And I think because they're darker and because they have closer to African roots and they're proud of their African roots, unfortunately, with colorism, with certain discrimination, it gets cut off.
Yeah. I think that we really talked a lot about the culture, and I think that's beautiful. Do you have any final thoughts to conclude? Maybe any advice to someone who should travel? Maybe they want to travel to Salvador, Brazil?
I think it's an amazing place to go to. I would learn as much, you know, history as you can. It's definitely a culture to be respected. You know, it's deeply Afro-Indigenous, and, you know, land is so important, and it's just thinking about every single step, you know, you're taking. And that was something we really understood, especially going to the Candomblé house. But, you know, we were working when we were there, and it's like, I just want to experience everything. I would experience everything again, maybe not so much with a camera.
Yeah.
I would just live in it, be in the moment. That's how, you know, great Brazil was.
I agree. I think this program, it's one of its kind. Like, I literally don't think this is anywhere else where you take students from different disciplines and give them a production company completely student run. Like, Hezi, Amari, Caleb, they're there for like guidance and maybe like explaining things. But from day one, we're doing everything ourselves. When we like go to get money, when we go and do everything, like it's literally us, and it's one of a kind. But one of the things of how it's different, it's social justice. It's not, oh, let's go make a film. Like, we have to talk about really hard topics. We have to talk about colorism, racism, discrimination. We have to have these conversations. So when we're going to places like Bahia, we're not coming in with a tourist mindset. We're trying to be respectful. We're trying to be a fly on the wall, and we're trying to absorb as much as we can and learn and be like global citizens. Now, if I never did this trip and if I never talked to the locals and the natives there, I would have never known how me traveling, just going to like a 5-star, whatever, just going to a pool or doing all this tourist stuff can hurt a community. So it's like, if you're going to travel, not just like Meg said, don't just, do research, really try talking to the people there, like guard down, like just, how's your day? Like, what do you usually do? Like, just try talking to them. I think a lot of people are more friendly than they let off. Obviously, be careful, be safe, don't get scammed. But once you do that, you'll learn so much about the area, no matter where you go. And it actually will never make you just travel with with blinds over your eyes. Your eyes will always be open no matter where you go. And you're going to constantly be like, am I being a good citizen? Am I doing and supporting the right thing? Because obviously no one's perfect. Some people where we go need tourism because that's literally their job. And other communities are like, no, that tourism's hurting me. So you got to kind of pick and choose your battles. But I will say, at least for just Salvador Bahia, and it's funny because when we went, all of a sudden it was trending on TikTok. We kept seeing those TikToks of people like, here I am in Salvador Bahia, the most populated Afro indigenous place or Black place outside of the continent of Africa. And we were like, we just went there 2 weeks ago.
We're like, we're in the background of that video.
Yeah, they were at the places we were at. Like they saw the things we saw, and it was trending on TikTok and on YouTube and on Instagram. And we're like, that's insane. In fact, actually, one time when we were filming a parade in the square, one of the people we saw with the camera, they had a video, and I think we saw Liam or you in the background filming in the background.
Super stressed out.
And they're just like, and I see Jameson telling Liam yeah, go in. And we're in the background of another person's video that kind of went viral online. So it was really interesting. And I just think if you do go to Bahia, these people are way more friendlier than you would imagine. And they would love to tell their story. It's just no one asked them. So when we came, they were like, oh, finally, someone wants to know about us and our culture and what we do. So come in with an open arm, come in to learn, and just understand what you do affects someone, no matter what it is, no matter how small it is, no matter where you're putting your money, it affects someone. So why not just ask around as much as you can? And you'd probably be shocked. You might not even record for most of your trip. You might just be in the moment, because I will at least say that's how the program changed my life. I have not traveled the same since Brazil, because I still to this day think about Guga, Danny, Hijani, Stefani, Raquel, I think about everyone. And then even the Philippines, I think about those kids all the time. The people we met, it quite literally changed my life. And I'm like, this trip and these experiences showed me I want to do this in the future. It actually pushed me to be yeah, I want to be a global doctor. I want to be a public health physician. I want to go to different communities. I want to bring better medical practice. And it was really because of them. So that was a very long-winded answer, but I had to get it off my chest because I was like, yeah, just try to be a global citizen when you travel. Really understand everything you do affects someone, no matter the airline, no matter what you eat. Talk to the locals. Don't just do the relaxation resorts and 5-star treatments. Really talk to people at the spa. Where do you live? Because I know you don't live at the resort. Show me where you live. Let's do that. Things like that. Yeah.
Thank you both so much for being here and
for
sharing.
Having us.
Of course, and for sharing our experience almost 2 years ago in Brazil, but it still is very prevalent in our lives, obviously, and it's as if we just went yesterday.
Exactly.
Thank you for traveling with us to Brazil. I'm your host, Ava Petrosky. Stay tuned for a new location next time.